Thank you. The next item of business is a debate on motion 20550 in the name of Jim Fairley on a motion on legislative consent on the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Bill UK legislation. Grateful if members who wish to speak were to press their request to speak buttons. And I call on the Minister to speak to and move the motion.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. This afternoon we're debating the motion on the UK Government's Sustainable Aviation Fuel Bill. The Scottish Minister strongly welcome efforts to boost the production and the use of sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF, and therefore support the overall policy intention of this bill. I welcome the opportunity to speak today about the LCM for the UK Government's Sustainable Aviation Bill, and the UK Government's Sustainable Aviation Fuel Bill was introduced in the House of Commons on the 14th of May in 2025. This bill lays the foundation for a UK-wide revenue certainty mechanism. It's an essential step to make sustainable aviation fuel production commercially viable. The bill is designed to accelerate the domestic production of SAF and support the UK Government's aviation decarbonisation strategy. SAF is one of the most promising ways of reducing aviation emissions and is therefore important in supporting the Scottish Government's commitment to achieve net zero by 2045. The bill opens the door to future investment and green jobs and could bring significant economic benefits if this fuel were commercially produced at scale in Scotland. Including Scotland in this bill ensures that we remain competitive and we do not lose out to other parts of the UK. The bill as introduced had no formal role for Scottish ministers, with the exception of a consult provision within Clause 10. So the Scottish Government has had extensive engagement with the UK Government, both at official and ministerial level, to resolve the concerns around the regulation-making powers in the bill which may be exercised for a devolved purpose in Scotland. Discussions have led to the UK Government amending the bill to include a requirement for the Secretary of State to consult with Scottish ministers on 3 regulation-making powers in clauses 1.8, 3.1 and 11.4, and in addition to the existing consult provision for clause 10.1. I believe the agreed statutory consult mechanism offers appropriate reassurance and transparency, particularly given the early stage of development of the UK SAF industry. I welcome the positive and the collaborative engagement between the Scottish Government and the UK Government throughout the bill development, particularly at the latter stages. And I also welcome the NZEC Committee's report and the recommendation that the Scottish Parliament consent to all the clauses in the bill as set out in the motion. I have considered the conclusions and the recommendations and provided a response on some of the recommendations, with a full response to be provided to the committee shortly. Therefore, the Scottish Government is recommending that the Scottish Parliament gives consent to clauses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 11.2 to 5, 12 to 20 and the schedule within the bill. Scottish ministers remain committed to constructive engagement and to supporting measures that could lead to increased production and the use of sustainable aviation fuel in Scotland. I therefore ask the Parliament to approve this motion for legislative consent in relation to the aforementioned clauses contained within the SAF bill. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Minister. I now call on Edward Mountain on behalf of the Net Zero Energy and Transport Committee.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. When it comes to motions on legislative consent, I sometimes worry about the risk of being typecast, as I always seem to be fated to be the angry convener delivering a speech about the flaws of the LCM process. But today, the Parliament will be pleased to know the angry convener is not going to be here. The process in this case, although it didn't run perfectly, it ran well enough for the Net Zero Energy and Transport Committee to come to a reasonably unrushed view on consent for this bill. We even had time to go beyond the narrow bounds of the LCM for a more general look at the state of our sustainable aviation fuel industry, SAF for short, and I thank those experts that we heard from. So what did we find? I only have some time, limited time, for some quick bullet points. First, we need SAF if we are to decarbonise, and we need loads more of it. We need a prudent governmental intervention to help the sector achieve liftoff. A price stabilisation mechanism, such as in the bill, could help. But this is a framework bill, so the detail will absolutely have to be right. The type of SAF we need most is so-called power-to-liquid SAF. Biofuels might be the sort of bridge to the next decade, but they are land and resource hungry. The basic building blocks of power-to-fuel SAF are hydrogen and carbon atoms, which never run out. Scotland is well placed for SAF. We have Grangemouth and other industrial assets that could be repurposed. We have the skills base, especially from the oil and gas industry. We have a strong record in wind energy generation and the potential for growth in green and blue hydrogen and carbon capture. So what are the barriers? There's the high price of electricity that makes it harder for us to compete internationally. We also seem to be lacking to our witnesses. What also seemed to be lacking to our witnesses was a sense of government having a clear plan for SAF, one that signals confidence and momentum to potential investors. Our report called on the Scottish Government to get the mothballed SAF working group back to work and look at quick wins like whether Grangemouth could be a base to mix and redistribute biofuels. The UK and Scottish Government have worked out the differences on order-making powers as the bill has proceeded. Our report recommends that the Parliament consents to the bill, but we call on the Scottish Government to be on the front foot in using all the powers it already has and in making use of the case to Whitehall for a truly UK-wide industrial policy for SAF, which makes best use of Scotland's considerable industrial, natural and human assets. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Mr Mountain. I now call on Sarah Boyack.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I think this is an important debate we're having this afternoon. SAF is important because one of our key climate emissions is air travel, at 4.5% in Scotland, and transport is 16% of our total emissions. So how we power our planes going forward is absolutely vital. And while short journey flights could be powered by electricity, SAF is absolutely key as part of our long-term solution. So the requirement to have increasing amounts of SAF to fuel our planes is vital. I want to thank the Net Zero Committee, their clerks and the witnesses who gave really important evidence to the committee. And the fact that the committee was indeed happy for legislative consent to be given to this bill today was actually quite significant, because having watched the debates the committee had, they did interrogate the issues that were raised by witnesses very effectively. And I think one of the things that I want to draw on is if we do not produce sustainable aviation fuel in the UK, then we'll have to import it. That would be a massive missed opportunity in terms of jobs, our economy, but it would also be an energy security issue for our aviation sector if we have to import low-carbon sustainable aviation fuel. So I believe we don't just need to pass this LCM today, although the passing of it is really important in terms of giving confidence and clarity to the sector, but I think we should also support the opportunity to produce SAF in Scotland. And as was mentioned by the convener of the committee, the recommendations included in Project Willow could enable the investment that would see us having highly skilled jobs in Grangemouth, high-quality jobs, lowering our carbon emissions and enabling a supply of SAF in Scotland that could then be transported to our key airports. Last year's commitment by the UK Labour Government to invest £200 million was vital in supporting progress at Grangemouth to deliver innovative, low-carbon outputs and jobs. And developing innovative production, as was discussed by the committee, biogenic CO2 and green hydrogen, utilising Scotland's timber and wood waste as a sustainable feedstock for second-generation bioethanol, can be used for fuel blending for SAF. I think it's absolutely critical that we use our low-carbon electricity in Scotland to deliver green hydrogen. Now, I think it was Unite that said we could deliver these ambitions by the early 2030s. But it's absolutely clear we need to give investors the confidence to invest now, because other countries across the world are investing in this technology and they're going to be able to produce their SAF, so we need to produce it too. I think this LCM is an opportunity to support lowering our carbon emissions, which are deeply damaging and we regularly discuss, but to create the high-quality jobs, to deliver energy security for our aviation sector, and actually to let Scotland lead the way in delivering innovative SAF production. So passing this LCM today is important, but I hope we use it as an opportunity, and the Government uses it as an opportunity to keep working with the UK Government, to bring potential investors together and to update Parliament. Because the issue isn't going away. I think it would be useful to keep it on the agenda of this Parliament. It's a huge opportunity and we cannot afford to miss out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Boyack. I call on the Minister to wind up.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I won't take long at all. As we draw to a close, I'd like to thank Edward Mountain and Sarah Boyack for their contributions. In terms of the SAF working group, Edward Mountain is absolutely correct. It was wound down while the Project Willow was ongoing. There is still work to come out of that. Scottish Enterprise are finalising a report to look at all of the economic benefits of producing SAF here in Scotland. And Sarah Boyack's contribution there, talking about the wind potential. The point that gives to me, Presiding Officer, is this. All of that resource, all of those abilities, all of the things that are sitting here in Scotland, wouldn't it be absolutely fantastic with full control to manage all of that here in Scotland through independence? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes the debate on motion on a legislative consent on the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Bill UK legislation. Before we momentarily move on to the next item of business, I call Gillian Martin for a point of order.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I appreciate the opportunity to clarify an issue for the record that came up in an exchange between myself and Mercedes Villalba in yesterday's Stage 3 proceedings. In that exchange, Ms Villalba said I would not work with her despite offering to do so. In fact, I met Ms Villalba with various government officials on Stage 3 amendments twice, on the 27th of November and the 7th of January. In addition, I provided a detailed letter setting out my position in relation to issues the member had raised on invasive non-native species. So yesterday, in my response to her contribution in Amendment 61, I was able to say that I did in fact work with her. As a result of our discussion on the Sitka spruce issue with the Chief Executive of Scottish Forestry on the 27th of November, I was able to arrange for a suitable amendment to be drafted by forestry officials and agree with Mary Goujon that would address her concerns, which she agreed to at the time. When finalised, Mary Goujon discussed that amendment separately and further with Mercedes Villalba, given the solution lay in her portfolio. In addition, Ms Villalba indicated that I had gone back on a commitment to her about working together on an amendment to add additional restrictions on the current powers to exempt species from relevant provisions of the Wildlife and Countryside Act. And I would point out that if the context of my comments at Stage 2 were considered in full, it is clear that my offer to work with the member head of Stage 3 was in relation to a different amendment about placing a new requirement for any species listed in that exemption order to have a management strategy in place, which I discussed with her. And I hope that clarifies the situation.